I can still hear the laughter echoing from the corner booth. That easy, careless kind of laughter that stings more because it's not directed at you, but around you. Like you're invisible. Or worse, just tolerated. We were at this trendy little Mediterranean place downtown. Her pick. One of those spots with low-hanging lights, overpriced flatbreads, and a wait list long enough to make you feel privileged just to sit down. I didn't really fit in there. Not in my scuffed boots, or with my quiet voice, or the way I asked for sweet tea like I was still in North Carolina and not some polished corner of the city where even the water had to be infused. There were 6 of us, her friends from work, mostly. Finance people, fast talkers, high laughers. They wore watches that probably cost more than my car and tossed around terms like compounding interest and market volatility while passing the baba ganoush. I tried to follow, nod where it made sense, but every time I opened my mouth, I felt like a high schooler at a lecture on quantum mechanics. I didn't mind that so much, not really. I was used to being the quieter one, the one who listens. What got me, what really started to sink into my chest like a cold stone, was how she acted around them. Like I was furniture. Like I wasn't part of the conversation or even the atmosphere, really. Just there, like the breadbasket. It happened somewhere between the second round of drinks and the lamb skewers. Her friend Madison leaned over the table, eyes glossy from the wine. So, how long have you two been together now? What is it, 5 years? 6, I offered quietly. But she cut me off with a little laugh. Oh, he's not with me. He just kind of lives in my apartment. He's more like my roommate. The table burst out laughing. Everyone, except me. And her. She didn't laugh because it was a joke. She laughed because it was true, at least in her head. And she wanted them to know it. Wanted them to know she had me on a leash. That I wasn't someone to take seriously. That whatever history we had, whatever promises or late-night talks or quiet Sundays meant something to me, they didn't to her. Not anymore. A roommate. I stared down at my glass. Watched the condensation drip down the side. It took me a full minute before I realized my fingers were trembling. I didn't say anything that night. Not then. What do you even say to that? In front of people you barely know? Do you make a scene? Do you laugh along and pretend it's all just fun? I just sat there and let the moment pass like a freight train right through my gut. She didn't look at me after that. Not once. We got home late. She was tipsy, giggling to herself as she kicked off her heels and flopped onto the couch. I stood in the doorway for a while, keys still in hand, watching her scroll through her phone like nothing had happened. Hey, I said softly. That thing you said at dinner. She barely looked up. What thing? About me. Being your roommate. Oh, she said, waving a hand like it was a mosquito. It was just a joke, babe. Don't be sensitive. Sensitive. That word again. The one she used whenever I brought up anything real. Anything that made her uncomfortable. Sensitive when I asked why we hadn't been intimate in months. Sensitive when I said I missed how we used to talk. Sensitive when I asked if she even still saw a future with me. You meant it, I said. I saw your face. That got her attention. She sat up, a little slower this time, her eyes narrowing just slightly. Okay, and what if I did? I mean, look around. You don't pay rent. You cook sometimes. You sit at home all day writing your little stories. I swallowed hard. They're not just stories. I'm trying to finish the book. She laughed again, louder now. Trying. Exactly. Meanwhile, I'm working 50 hours a week keeping us afloat. I didn't answer. What could I say? That I'd cashed out my 401k to help cover her student loans last year? That I did all the laundry, all the dishes, cleaned up after her dog? That I hadn't bought a single thing for myself in over a year? It wouldn't have mattered. Because somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being her partner and became her project. Her charity case. Her roommate. That night, she fell asleep with her phone still glowing on her chest. I sat in the dark at the edge of the bed, staring at the closet. The one we used to share. Now half empty. I didn't sleep. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I packed a bag. Not everything. Just enough. My laptop, a week's worth of clothes, a few notebooks, a photo of us from the first year, before the contempt started creeping in through the cracks. I left the key on the counter. I didn't leave a note. She wanted a roommate. Now she had the apartment to herself. And the rent. Maybe the silence would say what words couldn't. I thought she'd call that day. Or text. Something. But the hours passed in silence. I checked my phone too often, hoping, then resenting myself for hoping. I kept imagining how she'd react when she found the key on the counter. Would she panic? Get angry? Cry? Nothing. Not even a question mark. By nightfall, I realized she hadn't even noticed. I stayed in a cheap motel on the edge of the city. The kind of place where the wallpaper peels and the vending machine always eats your change. But the room was clean, quiet. It was the first time in months I hadn't felt the need to tiptoe around someone's mood. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. For the first time in a long while, I wrote without feeling guilty. No background noise of her sighing or pacing or glancing at the clock like my words had a timer. I wrote until 3 a.m. I didn't even realize how tired I was until my eyes started blurring the page. The next morning, still no message. Instead, I saw she posted a selfie on her story. Iced coffee in hand, her dog in the passenger seat, captioned, "Starting the week strong, flexed biceps, medium skin tone, hot beverage, paw prints." Nothing about me. Nothing about us. Just curated smiles for her audience. I stared at that post for a long time. The first weekend apart felt strange. I didn't realize how many of my routines revolved around her. Saturday used to mean grocery shopping together, arguing over almond milk or which cereal had less sugar. Sundays were her yoga classes while I made pancakes. Now, I walked aimlessly through a park with a takeout coffee, sitting on a bench watching strangers go by. I kept waiting for the sadness to hit harder. But what I felt wasn't grief. It was something quieter. Clarity. The kind you don't get when you're constantly adjusting yourself to keep someone else comfortable. I was starting to remember what it felt like to just be myself, without needing permission. Still, I missed the dog. Not her, not really. But the little things. The way he used to jump into my lap while I worked. How he followed me from room to room like a shadow. I wondered if he noticed I was gone. On Monday, I finally got a message. Not a text. An email. Subject, rent due. No greeting. No signature. Just, since you decided to leave, I expect you to cover your share of the rent until we get someone else. Let me know your Venmo. I stared at the screen, half smiling in disbelief. That was it. No. Where are you? No. Can we talk? Just business. Like we were exactly what she said I was. Roommates. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because I realized something important. I had already paid more than my share. In time. In care. In small sacrifices no one tallied. I had given her more than money. I gave her belief when she barely gave back acknowledgment. That night, I made a decision. I called my cousin in Asheville. He'd offered his guest room months ago, back when he heard tension in my voice even though I never said the words out loud. Open invite, he said. If you ever get tired of walking on eggshells. I was tired. So I packed the rest of my things, checked out of the motel, and pointed my car south. The drive was long. Quiet. But that silence felt different now. Not the cold kind I used to sit in when she'd come home and not speak for hours. This was peace. Space to breathe. I crossed state lines listening to old mixtapes I hadn't touched in years. The kind of music that reminded me who I was before her. Before I started believing that love meant shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's schedule. As the mountains started to rise in the distance, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not a full release. Not yet. But the beginning of it. When I got to my cousin's place, he didn't say much. Just hugged me hard and pointed me toward the room. Clean sheets. Soft pillows. A desk by the window. You can stay as long as you need, he said. I nodded. Thanks. And then I slept. Deep, dreamless. The kind of sleep you don't get when you're wondering if the person next to you still sees you or just the convenience of you. She didn't message again. Not when the first of the month came and she had to pay the full rent. Not when she realized the internet was in my name. Not when she noticed her Netflix password had stopped working. Nothing. But I heard from Madison. A message on Instagram, of all places. Hey, are you okay? I didn't mean anything by what I said that night. She can be cold. Just wanted to check in. I read that 3 times. I didn't respond. Because she didn't defend me when it mattered. She laughed. Just like the rest. But her message told me everything I needed to know. People were noticing. She might have convinced herself I was nothing more than a roommate, but to everyone else, I was the one who walked away. And maybe, just maybe, that was starting to feel a little too real. It was a Wednesday morning when she finally called. Not text, not email, an actual call. I was standing in my cousin's kitchen, halfway through making scrambled eggs, when her name lit up my screen. I stared at it until the screen went dark again. Then it rang a second time. I let it. The third time, I picked up. I didn't say anything. Just waited. She spoke first. Hey. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. No edge. No performance. Just the sound of someone trying to figure out what to say to the person they didn't expect to miss. I didn't think you'd actually leave, she said after a moment. I didn't answer. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just knew that if I spoke too soon, I'd lose the steadiness I'd found these past few weeks. I came home that night, she went on, and the place felt different, quieter, like a drawer had been left open in my chest. She paused, waiting for something from me. I gave her silence. I was mad at first, she admitted. You just left. No message. No explanation. You gave me the explanation, I said, my voice level. You gave it to me at dinner. In front of 5 people. She exhaled slowly. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. I replied, not unkindly. And that's what hurt. There was a long silence on her end. Then, I thought, maybe you'd fight for it. For us. That hit me harder than I expected. Because I had. For years. Every late-night talk. Every it's okay, when she came home distant. Every meal cooked. Every quiet compromise. But fighting for someone who doesn't see you isn't love. It's erosion. You didn't want a partner, I said. You wanted a placeholder. Someone who wouldn't ask for anything back. I was scared, she admitted, of how far apart we'd grown. Of what it meant if I admitted it out loud. I joked about you being a roommate because, in a way, I knew it was true. And I hated that. I didn't know what to say to that. She wasn't evil. Just emotionally negligent. And maybe that's worse, in a way. Because it's not always loud or obvious. It just wears you down until one day you're packing a bag in silence and leaving behind a life that forgot how to see you. I'm sorry, she said finally. I know that's probably too little too late. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. It's not about the rent, she added. I was angry and embarrassed. I've never paid it alone before. Never lived truly by myself. I said, well, now you can. She let out a quiet laugh. Guess I can. There was a long pause. No tension. Just the quiet understanding between 2 people who once loved each other and now stood on either side of a line they both drew. Take care of the dog, I said. He always liked you best anyway. She sniffled. I'll try. We hung up without any promises. No, let's stay friends. No, maybe someday. Just silence again. But this time, it didn't ache. A few weeks later, I got a check in the mail. From her. The memo line said, back rent, emotional. It made me laugh. A real one. First in a long time. I didn't cash it. Instead, I put it in a drawer with that old photo of us. The one I nearly took when I left, but decided to leave behind. Not out of bitterness. Out of closure. Today, I've got a small apartment near the woods. A beat-up desk by the window. And a manuscript that's finally done. It's about a man who disappears after his partner forgets he's not furniture. It's raw. A little messy. But it's real. Kind of like me. Sometimes I miss the sound of her laughing in the kitchen. Sometimes I miss the life I thought we were building. But then I make my own breakfast. Open my own mail. Pay my own rent. And I remember. She said I was just her roommate. So I became my own. And it turns out, I'm not so bad to live with after all.